We're outside St James's Park and the famous bar Nines, where the supporters come. We've got 4 of the most knowledgeable Newcastle supporters here, and we're going to start by asking why under Steve Bruce does it feel to me as an outsider that he gets more flack than Mike Ashley does, when with other managers it's always felt like Mike Ashley bore the brunt of the criticism.
So I think Steve Bruce is the one that picks the team at the moment, and when the team aren't performing very well on the football pitch, it's only right that a lot of stick goes his way. Newcastle fans haven't forgotten that Mike Ashley's the owner, and there's obviously a lot of problems there. We haven't forgotten that, but when results aren't going our way and we have problems on the football pitch, it's only right that football fans are going to turn their attentions to the manager.
Was that the same under Benitez?
No, it wasn't the same under Rafa Benitez. I think Mike Ashley employed Steve Bruce, maybe knowing that he was a scapegoat and that the blame would be deflected from Mike Ashley onto Steve Bruce, because he knew that coming into it he was going to be such a controversial character. Of course, his previous links to Sunderland and comments that's been made in the past, you know, all of it kind of goes against him. So in some aspects I do feel bad for Steve Bruce, because I don't feel like he's been fairly treated by Mike Ashley, and he has been a massive deflection of the blame.
What does Steve Bruce have to do to win you over?
Well,
Can he win you over?
He can, of course he can. Winning football matches changes everything, and he needs to win some football matches. Newcastle have won 7 of the last 34 fixtures in all competitions. That's not good enough. Newcastle got good players playing today. They've got Alan St Maximin, they've got Callum Wilson. We were talking before in the pub, there's probably 5 players will start at out of position. It's no good, that. As a football fan, it's infuriating when you know there's a lad playing. Give you an example. Miguel Almiron, if you saw the game at Old Trafford last week, Newcastle's goal on the counter-attack, brilliant, scintillating play. He's played as a central midfielder. That's no good. I think ultimately Bruce has the tools to perform better. Newcastle fans, like Thomas says, we know Mike Ashley's the owner. There's a reason Newcastle aren't competing with the teams in the top 6. That's fair enough. We get that. We accept that. Newcastle are rubbish. You lads watch us regularly. You commentate on them regularly. We're not a good team. We're probably the worst team to watch in the league. That's Steve Bruce's fault. That's not Mike Ashley.
Where do you think this set of players should finish?
I mean, I think that the team is capable of finishing in that no man's land between sort of 9th and 15th, but I don't even think it's necessarily about the finishing position. Obviously survival, yes, staying in the Premier League is important, but for me it's about looking at the sort of top 6-7 of the Premier League. They're kind of away, they're on a different planet. If you're in that kind of middle group of teams, what you want to see is entertaining football, a team that's showing some kind of ambition, a team that I guess is looking, or a club that is looking to better itself. And I think unfortunately with Steve Bruce, Alex is saying he thinks that Steve Bruce can win the fans around. I think based on Steve Bruce's managerial career up until this point, he's 61, 62 now. He was at Chef Wed in the middle of the Championship when he came to Newcastle. Yes, he could win around, but it would take something that I don't think his history as a football manager indicates that he can do. So what I would like to see personally is I would like to see a manager come in, a younger manager who has got ideas about playing a style of football that, yes, we mightn't win anything, we didn't expect that. What we'd like to see is just an entertaining style of football, and by entertaining I just mean a side that doesn't sort of cede territory from kick-off like that.
You're fighting many battles at the moment, Newcastle fans. Obviously, there's one that you're not happy with the manager, you make that known, but also you're not happy with your owner, but your owner has tried to sell the club, and tonight we believe there's some protests against the Premier League because of the Saudi Arabian takeover. Where are you at on Mike Ashley at this moment, and do you feel a little bit that he has tried everything to sell the club, and actually it's the Premier League now that's the problem?
I cannot for one split second comment on how the Premier League works. It's as simple as that. What I will say is that if Mike Ashley wants to sell the club, he just has to drop the price to a price that is, you know, interesting to someone who has, let's say, a couple of $100 million. I think asking for 300 million, whatever it may be, in the current climate is possibly too much. If he really, really wants to sell the club, this is a very wealthy man.
Do you not believe he wants to sell the club?
He does, but I think, let's say he's a hard-headed, big capitalist businessman, right? The man wants to milk as much as he possibly can at the club. So it's almost, he's kind of, I want this amount of money, I want to sell the club, and I'm not willing to negotiate. It's like, no, if you really, really, really deep down want to get rid of this club, you want to get this kind of monkey off your back, so to speak, then you'll just drop the price. It's not like you can't afford it.
It's like selling your house, isn't it? If you really want to get out of it, you drop the price.
He's not going to be skinned if he's not going to be skinned individually if he drops the price of the club, right? And that's the thing. So yes, I believe he wants to sell the club, but as has always been the case with Mike Ashley, look at his business throughout the years, it's always got to be on his terms, and in the world that we're in at the moment, it doesn't work like that, right?
There are protests though tonight against the fact that the Saudi Arabian takeover was blocked. Are you in favour of the takeover?
Yes, because I want to see Newcastle United sold. I believe that, you know, the protests tonight, I think they show how frustrated Newcastle fans are with the whole situation and the fact that it's dragged on for so long. This started in April last year, and we're now in September 2021, and we still don't have an answer. It's going to court. We just don't know where we're going with it, and that's the frustration for me personally, and I think for a lot of fans, is that the lack of communication on this entire issue is a major problem. The club's in limbo, completely in limbo, and we're not getting out of it until it's resolved. And I struggle to see where the resolution's going to come from. I'm really worried about the future of the football club, because it's still under Mike Ashley's ownership and it's being neglected. Yet, where does it go from here? If this takeover doesn't happen, I don't know where it goes.
Steve Bruce last week, I think, had a pop at the local press, whether that was interpreted as the fans. I think the fans were chanting for Steve Bruce to go on the last game. We're outside, you know a lot more about your football club than us, but it always feels like a soap opera, Newcastle United, not just Mike Ashley, not just Steve Bruce, continually. Is that always a problem for maybe whoever came in, an owner or a manager coming in?
I don't believe so. I think if we were run in a way that was normal for a Premier League football club to operate the business side of it professionally, we're a skeleton football club. There's not a lot of staff here, and so when it becomes like a soap opera, and that's what it's seen as on the outside, we get that as fans. There's always something going on at Newcastle United. It's just, we still believe as a football club we can be run normally, we can operate professionally, and we can succeed on the football pitch. Maybe not at the levels of the top six, we don't want that. It's just try and be the best that we can be, and we don't get that at the moment.
What's your feeling for people like me and Gary, pundits, people who comment on your club from the outside? Do you think we don't almost get it in some ways, and you're frustrated by some of the stuff that we talk about or other pundits talk about when they speak about Newcastle?
I think sometimes the media put this idea into people's heads that Newcastle fans have ridiculous ambitions and expectations, like we want to be challenging for the league back to the 90s, back in the Keegan era. We've never said that. That's never been the ambition. We accept that we're not at that place anymore. Time's moved on, things aren't the same as they were, but what we want is not to have to go into a new season worrying about relegation constantly. I think it should be easy for Newcastle to stay up in the Premier League, you know, mid-table. It's not a lot to ask, and I think certainly, you know, I wish people would realise that Newcastle fans just don't want to have to worry about relegation going into the new season.
I knew the Newcastle of the 90s, and you come up here, the atmosphere was absolutely out of this world. I've now been coming up here for the last 10 years with Sky. I don't remember coming up here in the last 10 years where I've felt as though there's been an atmosphere that is happy, where the fans have got hope. Is that right? Do you come to the game without hope? Or you just, when you walk into that ground tonight against Leeds, what is it that's in you that you're feeling as a fan of this club now?
I think we were talking about it before. Before the match, we're thinking if Bruce loses tonight, Leeds are a good team. They've had a bad start, but they're a good team. They create chances. They normally score goals. If we get done 3 or 4-0 tonight, will this be Bruce's last game? And we're like, these aren't the conversations fans should be having. Is it going to be the manager's last game? Will he leave? Will he get paid off? And then you walk onto the pitch, you walk through through the stand, and you see the pitch, and you see the lads come out from the Millburn stand, and you're like, we're up for this. But ultimately, like Holly's just correctly said, what is this? Is this 17th we'll take it now? Is this, we're the only Premier League club not to sign an additional first-team player to last season? It's almost like a club that exists away from the rest of the Premier League. It doesn't make any sense. We can't understand it. Why don't we sign any players? Like every single other Premier League club signs players. To answer your question, though, it almost exists to exist, and there's 10,000 fans walked away. You'll see empty seats tonight. You wouldn't, when you were coming, when you were both playing, you wouldn't have seen empty seats at St James's Park. There was 44,000 here against Southampton. If that doesn't explain the malaise across the club now, I don't know what will. We all know people who walked away. Tens of thousands of people have walked away from the football club, and that's only getting worse. And if it continues, we worry if we do go down, and let's face it, if you battle relegation every single season, you will go down eventually. There's loads of clubs who prove that. We worry about what's going to be left at the end of it. And I suppose it's just an existence to exist. There is no further purpose towards staying up.